Have you ever stared at something important for hours? A message you need to answer, a project you need to start, a decision you need to make, and somehow instead of doing it, you find yourself scrolling, cleaning your room, watching videos, or thinking about doing the thing instead of actually doing it. You tell yourself you're being lazy, but a strange question lingers underneath. What if laziness isn't the real problem? What if the thing you're avoiding isn't the task, but the feeling attached to it? And if that's true, what else in your life might be quietly controlled by emotions you never realized you were running from? Most people think procrastination is a time management problem, as if the solution is simply becoming more disciplined, more organized, more productive. But real life rarely works that way, because you've probably experienced something confusing. There are things you can spend hours doing without resistance. Watching videos, researching random topics, rearranging plans, helping other people solve their problems. Your brain is clearly capable of effort. So why does it suddenly shut down when it comes to certain tasks? The answer often has less to do with motivation and more to do with emotion. Imagine opening your laptop to work on something important. Immediately, a subtle feeling appears. Maybe anxiety, maybe uncertainty, maybe the fear of failing, maybe the possibility of discovering you're not as capable as you hoped. The task itself isn't what hurts. The emotion attached to the task hurts, and your brain notices. The brain has one job it takes very seriously: protect you from discomfort, not just physical discomfort, emotional discomfort too. So without realizing it, you begin avoiding the feeling. The problem is that the feeling and the task become linked together. Soon, seeing the task triggers the emotion, and the emotion triggers avoidance. Over time, the cycle strengthens itself. You avoid, you feel temporary relief. Your brain learns that avoidance works. And the next time the feeling appears, avoidance becomes even more automatic. This is why emotionally avoiding life can look exactly like laziness from the outside. But internally, something very different is happening. The hardest part is what this does to your identity. At first, you miss a few opportunities. Then you delay a few conversations. Then you postpone a few goals. Nothing dramatic. Just small moments, but eventually those moments begin shaping how you see yourself. You start saying things like, "I'm just lazy," "I never follow through," "I lack discipline," "I always waste my potential." The behavior becomes a story. And the story becomes an identity. Behavioral psychology calls this a self-reinforcing loop. Your actions create beliefs. Your beliefs influence future actions. And slowly you become trapped inside a version of yourself that was built from avoidance rather than truth. But here's the part most people never hear. This pattern doesn't mean you're broken. In many cases, it means your brain is trying to protect you, just not in a way that's helping anymore. Think about a smoke alarm. A smoke alarm isn't broken when it goes off. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem happens when it becomes too sensitive. Burn a piece of toast, and suddenly the entire house sounds like it's on fire. Emotional avoidance works similarly. At some point, your brain learned that certain experiences felt threatening: failure, rejection, embarrassment, disappointment, loss of control. And because the brain values survival more than achievement, it starts treating those emotional experiences like dangers that should be avoided. The adaptation makes sense, but over time, protection becomes limitation. The same system that once helped you avoid pain begins preventing growth, and this leads us to a deeper question. How exactly does the brain create this cycle? Imagine your mind as a prediction machine. Neuroscience suggests the brain constantly tries to predict future experiences before they happen. When you look at a task, your brain isn't seeing only the task. It's predicting the emotions that may come with it. If previous experiences connected that task to stress or self-doubt, your brain generates warning signals before you even begin. This creates a mental model that looks like this: prediction, emotion, avoidance, relief, repetition. The relief is the crucial part, because every time you avoid, the brain receives a reward, not a reward of pleasure, a reward of reduced discomfort, and the brain loves repeated rewards. This is why avoidance becomes habitual. Not because you're weak, but because your nervous system keeps learning the same lesson. Avoiding discomfort feels safer than facing uncertainty. The challenge isn't forcing yourself to become a different person. The challenge is teaching your brain a new lesson, and that starts with understanding a few principles. The first principle is this: name the feeling before the task. Most people say, "I don't want to do this," but that's often inaccurate. A more honest statement might be, "I don't want to feel anxious while doing this," or "I don't want to risk failing at this." Research on emotional labeling suggests that identifying emotions can reduce their intensity. When feelings become words, they become easier for the brain to process. For example, before opening a difficult email, pause and ask, "What feeling am I avoiding right now?" Even that small question creates psychological distance. The second principle is to shrink the emotional threat. Your brain reacts more strongly to vague challenges than specific actions. A huge project feels overwhelming. A 5-minute action feels manageable. Instead of telling yourself to write an entire report, tell yourself to write one paragraph. Instead of cleaning the whole house, clean one surface. This works because the brain often resists anticipated pain more than actual experience. Once movement begins, resistance frequently decreases. The prediction turns out to be worse than reality. The third principle is to separate discomfort from danger. This sounds simple, but it changes everything. When your heart races before an important conversation, your brain may interpret that sensation as evidence that something is wrong. But discomfort isn't proof of danger. It's often proof that something matters. A real-life example. Imagine asking for a raise. Your anxiety increases. Your brain says, "Avoid this." But the anxiety isn't necessarily warning you away. It may simply be signaling uncertainty. Learning to tolerate that feeling weakens avoidance over time. The fourth principle is to reward approach, not outcomes. Many people only reward themselves when they succeed. The brain learns that failure equals punishment. Eventually, even trying feels risky. Instead, reward the act of showing up. Send the application, make the phone call, start the workout. Regardless of outcome, this trains the brain to associate action with safety rather than threat. Behavioral psychology repeatedly shows that reinforced behaviors become more likely to occur again. The fifth principle is surprisingly important. Build evidence that contradicts your identity. If you've spent years calling yourself lazy, your brain selectively notices moments that confirm it. This is known as confirmation bias. To weaken it, collect proof of the opposite. Write down small examples: the difficult conversation you finally had, the task you completed despite resistance, the promise you kept. Over time, these examples create a more accurate story. Not a perfect story, a truthful one. When you step back, all of these principles connect to one simple mental model. Think of yourself as someone standing at the edge of cold water. The anticipation is painful. The mind imagines discomfort. The body hesitates. You spend minutes, sometimes years, standing on the edge, but life isn't happening on the shore. It's happening in the water. The longer you avoid stepping in, the more intimidating it appears. Yet once you're inside, something unexpected happens. The fear often shrinks, not because the water changed, because your relationship to it changed. Maybe that's what emotional avoidance really is, not an absence of effort, not a lack of discipline, but a habit of standing at the edge of experiences that feel uncomfortable, waiting until you feel ready, waiting until you feel confident, waiting until the fear disappears. But confidence rarely comes first. Experience comes first. Then confidence quietly grows behind it. So the next time you call yourself lazy, pause for a moment, look underneath the behavior. Ask what feeling might be hiding there. Ask what discomfort your brain is trying to escape. Because sometimes the thing blocking your life isn't laziness at all. It's an old protective pattern that no longer understands the difference between discomfort and danger. And maybe growth begins the moment you stop fighting yourself and start getting curious about what you're actually avoiding, not to judge it, not to eliminate it, just to see it clearly. Because once you can see the feeling, it no longer has to quietly run your life. And perhaps that's the strange truth. The goal was never to become fearless. The goal was simply to stop mistaking fear for a reason not to live.